Denise Wise is an extraordinary lady with a story that you're going to hear very shortly. And she's an author, she's a singer, she's a songwriter. And unusually, most people we interview have been in the TRNC for a long, long time. But Denise, this was her very first visit. So when I said to her, look, you seem to have an interesting story, will you talk to the podcast about your life and about stuff? And she immediately said, yeah, no problem at all.
We normally talk to people on this podcast who have come here on holiday, come for a visit, fallen in love, and either stayed or moved here eventually. Right. You are at the end of just your first 3-week vacation in TRNC. Those 3 weeks, the coldest on record, at least for the last 50 years or so. And I just wonder if that's tainted your opinion of this island. What are your initial impressions?
Not at all, because it's gorgeous, and I found the view stunning, just driving along the coast. Or we have been up to Karnak Castle, and that was the day it opened after the snow. It had been closed for 2 days, and it was a stunning sunny day. So despite the patches of snow on the side of the road, we had a marvellous time. We got right up to the top, and I did a 360-degree video, and I've just been taking loads and loads of footage, things that I will use for my own podcasts or various bits and pieces when I get home. And we've just been choosing the right days to go out to see scenery, and then having lots of lovely, cheap but gorgeous meals in the meantime.
You're based in Norwich, in the UK. What are you doing here?
Well, I'm very lucky. I've got a landlady, and she actually has 2 homes. So she lives here for 6 months, and I live in her house in Norwich in Norfolk permanently, but she's there for 6 months of the year during the summer. And this arrangement's worked perfectly for us for the last sort of five and a half years. And I've never had a chance to come out here because, to be honest, I was travelling to quite exotic places before the lockdown. I went to South Africa, Egypt, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Jackie had always invited me, but I was, I'm too busy, I'm sorry, I'd love to come, but... And then we had the lockdown, so this is the first time I've travelled in 2 years. And I just, I'm loving it, and I definitely want to come back.
It appears, from what I've seen on social media, you started writing or continued to write music and lyrics. Tell us about that. And you've got a band with the most extraordinary name.
I have indeed. It's a Peaceful Cacophony. That's a bit of a mixture of my bandmate and I, because we would have great creative periods which were peaceful but very exciting. And then we'd have cacophony because we're very, very different from each other. So in some ways we sparked each other off in a good way. In other ways, it was a bit chaotic, and that's another meaning for cacophony, isn't it? But hopefully the actual music isn't a cacophony, because it's alt rock, it's not the most peaceful music all the time, but we do have some ballads and some nice songs we're still working on. But we went crazy. We wrote 11 songs during that first year of the lockdown. We were in the same bubble, and now we're basically mastering and producing them, so they're coming out slowly. I've got a 4th one coming out in the next couple of weeks, and I decided, right, while I'm here, I'm going to take some of the beautiful scenery and record myself singing. And I've just got a mobile phone at the moment, so I've been out on the beach in the days that were actually warm enough and sunny enough. And I've recorded a lot of footage and sent that to David. And he does the videos as well. So we're like a little cottage industry.
He plays bass, drums, guitar. He's jack of all trades.
That's right.
From what I've heard, a master of most of them.
And David's interest started when he was 5, and his father played jazz. He was a jazz musician and did some quite big gigs, but he let him play drums from when he was 5 years old. and then always encouraged him because he was crazy about music, and he still is, and he's basically gone down the route of Kiss and big bands like, you know, the Sex Pistols. He was very much into post-punk as well.
Yeah.
And then it's gone through the years. He's been obviously a session musician for many big bands, but also been in smaller bands and just had a great career.
What about you? What's your history? Or did you just start doing this during lockdown?
Well, my parents ran a folk circle when I was very young up in Scarborough. Then they divorced when I was 7, so although I didn't hear them pick up a guitar or sing again since then, it was in my blood, you know, that sound. And some people think I sound a bit Celtic, but I do like the folk music. Then I was working in London and in the music industry, and that's where I met lots of interesting people. Music royalties, you know, we had a small office up in Marylebone, High Street. And that's, you know, really where I got to understand how to co-write with guitarists. I didn't play much myself, but my strength's the lyrics and the singing. And so, you know, since then I've known how to reach out to people and organise things, and I've got more and more independent, and I've written a song here actually on my iPhone.
You sent me the lyrics. It's called Shadow Play.
Yes.
You wrote it on the beach.
That's right.
Tell me about that.
Well, as you know, it was the sunset, and I was just walking back home with the sun behind me, and I noticed it was shining on the water, and it was literally the lap of the waves was just coming up to where my shadow feet were. So I started to play with my shadow and did a video which has only got my shadow walking along like Jesus walking on the water almost, you know. And then I took some other shots of the shadow, and then I thought, you know, I've been working a lot on my own personal dark bits and pieces psychologically and mentally over the last few years, particularly with lockdown, as we all have been struggling and wondering what's going to happen. And so I thought, wow, you know, I could just have this as an innocent song about shadows, or I could talk about something more deeply. And that's what I do with a lot of my songs. Unless I explain what it's about, people wouldn't necessarily know, because I write maybe an uplifting song, a poppy, or, you know, even a rock song. And, you know, if people are interested to know, I'll explain what the deeper. Most people just want to enjoy the music, don't they?
So what do? You've got your lyrics, and what do you do now? Do you write the melody? Does David write the melody? How does it work?
Melodies are my strength, actually, and he has given me a very nice compliment and said, you know, your songs are so catchy. So I think that is something that just comes naturally to me. And I just tend, even though I haven't really got an instrument that I work it up on, I just literally come out with them and record my voice onto my phone. And it used to be a dictaphone in the early days. You know, I started writing.
Yeah, I remember those.
2004, when there weren't any mobiles. So dictaphone, and then obviously getting together with a musician who could play guitar and just work out the chords, because I didn't even do that. So lazy. But these days, it's easier for me to just put everything on my MacBook Air. I can take it around with me because it's so light. And now I've got my own proper mic and setup. I can, you know, record myself, put my own videos from the beach here into the laptop and just mix it all together. And I have actually finished the video in 2 days and sent it to David already, and he'll be looking at that. But then the poem you just mentioned, which turned into a song, I haven't got the melody completely, but it's going round in my head, so no doubt one morning I'll wake up and it'll be there. That's how it happens.
Your partner compliments you on your melody writing. Something that I've heard on your Facebook site is a song called Set Me Free. Now, before you tell us what it's all about, let's just listen to it. Okay, that was Set Me Free, Peaceful Cacophony. And that was written by Denise, who's with me now. And Denise, what's the song about? And what was the inspiration behind it?
I did like working in media in London, but at that particular time, I was working for Deloitte, which is one of the big four, financial institutions in the world. And I just, being creative, my spirit was being drowned by working in these grey offices and, the dry atmosphere. And so the song was actually about me wanting to get out, let me free from this, get me out of here.
Excellent. You were talking earlier in our conversation about some dark times, and I want to now talk about the book you've written, Rising from the Ashes of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it occurs to me, although I haven't read the book yet, although I will, that you must have been a member. And I want to know, I know you're not now, and I want to know why you became involved and how.
My mother was Church of England, and we went along to Sunday school. But when she got divorced and my father left, she decided that it wasn't giving her the answers to her questions. And she wanted a black and white type of belief system by the looks of it. So the witnesses, of course, would come and call on her and study the Bible with her. But she did look at other religions, but she ended up converting, to becoming a Jehovah's Witness when I was 10. And my sister was 8. And so really, although we weren't raised from birth, it was very much prescriptive, and we didn't have a choice about whether we wanted to go to the meetings or not, when we were teenagers. And so therefore I went into becoming a full-time minister, which entails preaching for 90 hours a month on the doors. We're those annoying people that come and knock on your door and try and sell you at the time, the Watchtower and the Awake magazines.
What was that like?
Well, I quite like talking and I quite like being on my soapbox as a personality. So that was easier for me to do than a lot of other people. My sister really hated it, I think. And she didn't really like admitting to her friends and at school and so on that she was a witness. Whereas I've been one of those people, not a loner, but certainly someone who will say, well, this is what I believe. And
did you actually believe in the religion, or do you feel, looking back, that you had in fact maybe been brainwashed to some extent?
I absolutely believed it, 100%. I wouldn't have been able to feel as enthusiastic about preaching to people and bringing people in fact, unless I really believed in what I was saying. But there's always an answer for everything with the Bible, if you take it literally, as the witnesses do. They always had an answer, and they'd always refer back to Scripture. And it seemed logical at the time. And, really it doesn't occur to you that it might be controlling, because it just seems like a safe haven. And that's how they obviously hold the carrot out on the stick to people who are coming in. And, it's going to be a paradise if you follow all the rules and you're not a naughty boy or a naughty girl, you'll be saved and everything's going to be fine in the future. And I just started not to have doubts as such, but I think with mind control, if you try and persuade somebody up front that what they believe is wrong, they'll only dig their heels in harder. And that applies to any kind of mind control. So I was having psychotherapy, really felt that my marriage, needed some work on it. And she was obviously able to rebuild my sense of self in a very subtle way without approaching it from the front. And after 2 years, I think I read one book that really just was the epiphany, and it was something to do with Adam and Eve, and just all the blame that's laid on women for eating the apple and being the original sinner. And then really how religion has formed Christianity, and obviously the Quran holds the first...
How old you were at this time? What part of your life this was?
32, yeah. And it does take a long time. That was a process, but it seemed like a sudden thing. And I've called it a paradigm shift. I guess people can experience paradigm shifts in lots of different ways. Some people have a near-death experience or an experience that shocks them and they think, I need to change my whole life now. Other people might be on the psychedelics or, having an experience and realise that this isn't all there is to life, this humdrum existence with lots of rules and regulations. And so for me, freedom suddenly became the most important thing, and I sacrificed a lot.
Can you take that a bit further? What kind of sacrifices are we talking about?
Well, as the baptised witness and also one, that was a pioneer, I had to be an example, and that would mean not questioning anything at all. And you knew that if you left and that you didn't agree with the teachings, that you would be labelled as a disfellowship person and also an apostate. And a sort of old-fashioned word for that would be heretic. So they take it to the point, using scriptures about treating ones that have lost their faith and gone away, as the tax collector in Jesus' time. And if you know anything about how they treated the tax collectors, they would walk on the other side of the road if they approached. So that's really, they've taken it that step further and said no social contact with your family or anybody who's still a witness because of your influence.
So are you saying you've lost your family through this?
I am, indeed. Well, that side of the family, that are still witnesses, which would be, my mother and my stepfather. There were 3 of us, siblings, who have all left, and roughly around the same time, but for different reasons. And I think everybody has their own way of waking up, if you like, to the fact that they don't have any personal freedom. And I really want to draw into this discussion the fact that I feel it's happening to us now on a global scale, because I recognise, and that's what I talk about in my book, some of the main flags that you might be in a cult of some kind, a cult thinking. And at the moment, we're being ostracised if we don't agree with the mainstream narrative about things, whatever that might be, but in particular to do with health at the moment, and even war. It's causing divisions, and you feel that there isn't that freedom of thought. And because I've been through all that now 27 years ago and analysed it to death and had therapy and counselling and all sorts of things to overcome my holding back and my trauma from my early childhood, I would say I'm very, very sensitive to the signs and triggers that we're being controlled and told one thing, and that might not actually match up with was actually going on. And that was very much a theme that I found out since leaving the witnesses. What was going on behind closed doors was the way they deal with paedophilia, for instance, and keep it as the priests I know are entrusted with a lot of information with confession, and they don't go to the police. And in some ways, the witness elders that use these opportunities to talk to the people where things have been going on and they've come out, they very much want to deal with it behind closed doors. And that's led to a massive issue which is coming out in the courts in big cases. And also in Australia they had what was called, we nicknamed the ARC, but it was the Australian Royal Commission, delving into all forms of paedophilia in Australia. But the witnesses were brought to task, for hundreds and hundreds of cases, and which had all been kept quiet and not reported to the authorities. And this will continue to happen unless the governments actually make it the law to report anything that happens to the police. And this is only changing slightly at the moment. But
your experiences in your life, how has that affected your faith in general?
It's interesting because I was really angry with God and didn't even think I believed in him for the first 3 years after I left, because I felt I'd really lost my youth. You know, we had to be celibate until we were married. So all my 20s I was celibate and got married when I was 28. And then there were lots of other things we were discouraged from doing. So I felt really angry about not having a career, not going to college or uni. And then, just being taught to believe that everybody outside of the religion was bad and you'd, to experience really horrible things if you went out there. And of course, it's been exactly the opposite. I've had a great time. I've made some fantastic friends and I've done lots of creative projects as well. I've just found my voice and my creativity, and it's just been amazing. I've really loved it.
And have you found God again?
Yes, well, I have found my own form of spirituality, absolutely, after I had my 3-year cooling off period. But I've never wanted to be part of an organised religion, of course. But I would say there's so much value in it. I mean, Christianity as such, as an organisation, every organised religion will have its failings, but I do feel that Jesus himself had lots of amazing qualities and things to teach us, and as have many other gurus over the centuries, And so I do pick and choose what I feel are really good principles and ethics. And also joy, just knowing, I feel, that this isn't all there is. And if there is a third world war, I think if you have a belief that this human life we're living now isn't the end of it all, I think that helps people to cope with the thought that, there's something else.
But you really think in this day and age that religion is still important? I mean, most people understand why religion started off, but that was thousands of years ago, and a lot of it was ignorance. Knowing what we know today, would you say that religion is still important?
Absolutely. I think that community is really important, and religion can be a way of community where you meet, and if you have any troubles or problems, that community is there for you. And that was something I grew up with, and that's one of the good things I think that I enjoyed about my childhood and my youth, was that we just had lots of friends and we used to get together and have big gatherings. And then, my parents, obviously, they've got people that will help them now in their old age, and the value of that. A tribe is how it's described, isn't it? People that do believe the same thing. I think it's good for your psychology as long as it doesn't become controlling. Yeah.
Can I ask, how is it difficult to relate all the things that you wish hadn't have happened, if you like? Or is it therapeutic to a certain extent to talk about it?
Well, I like my soapbox, so I have enjoyed the process of talking about it, because originally, before I started writing the book, which would have been 17 years ago, people were saying, you should write a book about this story. It's so unusual. I never heard of this. And show how you grew and changed and now where you are now. And I thought, well, actually, I was more keen on the music, but I should really write my story. And then it took me a long time. And I would say I went into a depression for about 7 years and had got writer's block. And then when I moved up to Norwich, it was so peaceful and so different from London, so not as many distractions. Obviously, we used to go out partying and drinking. And so I finally knuckled down and finished the book. And then I'd started writing another book about Norwich and the beautiful medieval architecture. And then some of the stories really stood out to me, and I thought I'd like to write about that as well and my experiences here. And so I would say, yes, it's just been an unfolding where I've now understood why things happened. I've been able to forgive my parents and release the anger around my upbringing. And rather than being in victim mode, which I think I definitely was for quite a few years, I've come full circle and I've just used it as an experience which has really helped me to see the world in a different way, in a more positive way.
What an extraordinary story. Denise Wise, yes, author, singer, songwriter, and now, of course, a lover of the TRNC to the extent that she's already planning a return in a few months. Now, if you